Welcome back to another Off the Record, real talk for regulated leaders. Michelle and I are super excited for today's conversation because I personally read a book recently and recommended it to her, and neither of us can get past how amazing this book is. So, for those watching, you can see the cover, and those listening, it's called The Female Brain. The Female Brain by Luanne. Oh, don't butcher this.
Brizendine,
There
one
you
of
go.
those.
Yeah, and she also has The Male Brain. I will admit I have not read that one yet.
Not yet.
Little backstory on this. I actually saw this on the shelf of a girlfriend's house probably 4 or 5 years ago and said, "Hey, can I borrow that?" And she was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And here it sat on my shelf for 4 or 5 years. And as it just stared at me and stared at me. And I just kept picking every other book around it, every other Audible. And then I finally just was like, something called me to it. And I was like, okay, now is the time. And as I started to read it on a flight, I was like, holy crap. I am so glad that I listened to my intuition and I didn't actually read this then. And I say that because a lot of times we read books and we get great information from them. And then if we don't have something tangible to actually apply that information to in that moment, we forget about it. And people will be like, what's the book that impacted you the most? And I know there are tens, if not dozens, of books that have impacted me, but I read them so long ago and I didn't implement it immediately that they just kind of fell off the shelf in a sense. And so for this, I'm so grateful that I'm reading it now, as it is super applicable to all of the things that I'm doing as I'm stepping into really just helping women understand their mind and body so that they can create that reality that they want, just like Michelle is doing the same thing. And so I recommended it to Michelle, and immediately we both were like, let's talk about this.
Yes.
So so we have not actually discussed what we're going to talk about, other than the fact that we're just going to start in the beginning of the book and go through it kind of like a book club would.
Yes.
um, and then those listeners, just so you know, this isn't going to be a consecutive thing. Just every now and again we'll come back to this book just to give you time to read it, get your own. So yeah, let's start from the top of like, how did this impact you so far? Wait, are you even done with it?
I'm not done with it yet.
Okay.
No, I quickly realized so I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to read the introduction, and even before you get into any of the chapters, there's this chart at the beginning of the book. And I started getting into this and I started taking notes profusely. And I
Yeah.
realized this is not going to be a book that I just read really, really quickly. I want to
Right.
absorb this, just echoing everything you just said. And it blew my mind. I have a little boy. I don't have a daughter. However, I feel like I've learned so much about him even just from reading this, because in order to talk about the female brain, there are aspects of the male brain and how the male development also occurs. So it's giving me a more complete picture of, I think my words too were like, oh my gosh, Jayna, this literally talks about my entire life. I'm pretty sure I started singing Killing Me Softly with his song because that's what it felt like. I was like, she's killing me softly with her words right now. Like all of these things are so accurate as to the different phases of life I was in and how your hormones would impact you as a female in your brain. And I was just blown away by that. I have found myself since then recommending this book to so many of my girlfriends, and that's why I was finally like, okay, like we really need to record this session, because I want to send this to every woman that I know, any parent that I know even, because I think it's so illuminating around. You and I talk a lot about emotions. We talk a lot about the mental, emotional, and spiritual.
Mhm.
There's also physiological aspect that creates all of our reality. And this goes really deep into that part. Now, the cool part is, I think you and I had this discussion, is that when you understand what we do about the mental and emotional and the programming, you can influence the physiological. She doesn't discuss that here in this book. And it's still so illuminating, because once you can recognize and see yourself in these pages, it just demystifies so much about life. And then it gives you, at least for me, and I think for you, it gives us the power back because we're like, oh, okay, this is something that's happening. Here's the actual purpose for this. Here's how I can now integrate and maybe modify some of these things in my own life so that I can have a smoother experience of reality, just like you said.
Absolutely. I love that the way she broke down the book is chronological in a sense.
Hmm.
So she starts to talk about our after birth, how babies are different, male and female, and then into teenage years, and then into what for the woman would be birthing timeframes, and then premenopause, postmenopause. And so it gives you an ability to, if you're reading this younger, be able to prepare and anticipate. So you can have that awareness when you're feeling a certain way or making certain decisions. Like we often, I might be projecting, we often as women fall into people pleasing mentalities where we do that. And this book explains exactly why that is.
Hmm.
And so I used to think, well, that's trauma and that's this and that. And it's like, it can be. And there's always chemistry at play. Right.
Hmm.
You and I know that emotions don't last forever. If you can ride it out for 90 seconds, then you can be good to go because those chemistry in your brain is only happening for so long. And if we allow ourselves to just sit in that for that 90 seconds, then we can release that. What people do is they get stuck in these loops of just having the same thought and sparking the same mental chemistry over and over and over. So that 90 seconds becomes 90 days, or God forbid, 90 years of their life. Right.
Hmm.
So it gave us such an understanding. I too recommend this to everyone. I recommend it to a lot of men because I'm
Hmm.
like, look,
Hmm.
you can understand your wife better. She's not doing these outbursts for a reason. She's not being demanding for like there's something behind this, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
caught myself at this event talking to a woman who's like, I'm such an angry person to be around. Like I asked my kids and my husband if they wanted to come on this trip with me, and they said, "No, no, thank you." And like they were excited for time with her out of the house. And I was
Mm.
like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you had to hear that, right? Because it was
Mhm.
hard for her to hear that." I said, "And I'm also aware of what's happening in your brain and
Mhm.
how they're interpreting that. And so please go read this book because it will help you." As well as I saw a video of a woman sadly very emotional, crying and crying on YouTube, and she was so sad that it took her all the way till 55 to finally step
Mhm.
into embodying herself and like choosing for herself and putting herself first. And she's crying and she's like, "Gosh, I wish I had done this decades ago." And I'm over here like, "Honey, now is exactly the time for that because your brain was not prepared for that.
Mhm.
It is in a certain mode for a certain reason." And it's usually not until we get into our 50s as women that we finally get to a phase of life where it's finally about us. So I
Mhm.
know that's further in the book and we will get there because we're going to start
Mhm.
at the beginning and we're just going to tiptoe through this a little bit. And like Michelle said, this is not something to just rush through. It's a book you want to sit down, you want to think about, you want to integrate, you want to journal on, you want to talk to someone about it. I encourage you, read a chapter, teach a chapter, read a chapter, teach a
Mhm.
chapter. It's the best way to ingrain it. And I guess the first place to start is where she does start, which is the fetal area, right? And so
Mhm.
I'm looking at the chart that you were pointing out just so I can give
Mhm.
a synopsis overview of this, right? The major hormone changes that happen in fetal for the female is brain growth and development, left uh, also, I was put on this planet to speak, and yet I still have a hard time reading big words sometimes. So God bless my soul. Uh, development of unperturbed by the highest testosterone that makes a male brain. What that means, well, the book will tell you. Next one is what females don't have that what females have that males don't. Their brain cells are XX, which means more genes for faster brain development and female specific circuits, right? Let's point out that we all start as females. And
Mhm.
then the XX becomes XY, and then that's where the males begin to develop. So we do all start as females. Then the female specific brain changes at this age are female brain circuits for communication, gut feelings, emotional memory, and anger suppression grow uninhibited. Yes, there is no high testosterone in the male turnaround to kill all those cells. So, the last thing is reality change. More brain circuits for communication, reading emotions, social nuance, nurturing skills, and being able to use both sides of the brain, right? So these are the kind of the basis of where it starts to talk about different things. So did you have a specific thing in this first portion of the book that you highlighted or wanted to point out or really stuck out to you, Michelle?
I put an explanation point next to using both sides of the brain because I had watched when I was very young and the Discovery Channel still played educational content. Something about the brain, I remembered hearing how the part that connects the brain in a woman is like way thicker than in a man, which means that communication can happen more clearly. And as an adult reading that, I was like, oh, so what this says to me is if the right and the left side of the brains are have a clearer bridge between the two, we as women, this is why we can be very good at managing and really, uh, what's the word? We can be really good at excelling at both the masculine and the feminine energies
Right.
because we have that clear channel. This is also why maybe sometimes some men may have a harder time tapping into the full spectrum of being and women can find it easier. Now, that's not a given in any case, but I
Yeah.
just thought, wow, this is so impactful. And what you said about how the testosterone actually kills the centers of the brain that that are for communication, reading emotions, social nuance, nurturing skills. Huh. This in turn gives so much more in the way of this is why my little boy isn't as sweet and cuddly as I had expected a little boy to be because this happens in the womb still.
Yeah.
They're not even out yet. And they come out with centers that are just so much less developed. And in little girls, that's why all they want to do is talk and love and hug and all of these things. That just blew my mind from the very beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite amazing to think like I sit back a lot and I think, well, why would evolution have it this way? Right? There's an
Mhm.
intention or purpose for everything. But if a man has to, at the time, Paleolithic, right, leave and go hunting, he needs to strictly be in his logical mind because if he allowed his emotional mind to be a part of that, then he probably wouldn't go, right?
Mhm.
And yet the female needs to be able to have both because now that the men are gone, she needs to be able to both balance nurturing and holding that space emotionally, but also be able to think logically so that they can still care for the children. So I
Yeah.
think it's very unique how these aren't a shortcoming. It ends up being a strength for men in a lot of ways, and as they continue to grow and nurture, that there are other biological processes happening. Later in the book, it talks about how men being around the babies and around your children can actually suppress their testosterone. And there is a reason for that because it then allows them to have more of that nurturing, ness, that connective ability to build a bond, because that testosterone is going to cause them to want to go out and go hunt, fight, be at war, work, provide, do those things. And so that doesn't necessarily leave them desiring to be around their children. So all of these underlying functions are intentional. I also thought it was interesting, and you can tell me more about this because I'll state, I don't have kids, so I only have
Mhm.
nieces and nephews and other friends' kids to draw my anecdotal experiences from. But it talks about how the female gaze, so the infants, they love to eye connect and gaze at the faces of the caretaker, while boys tend to be a little bit less. They'll stare more at a fan or at the environment around, and they don't necessarily connect via the face as much. Did you find that with Leo?
Oh, for sure. Like all of these things were, again, just confirmation for my own experience as a human being that is a female growing up. And then as a parent having the opposite gender, a male. And just I would be like, "Oh my goodness, why isn't he want to look at me? Why doesn't he want to do this?" Because you do hear that about,
Yeah.
connecting with your baby, and he would never want to sit still and allow me to hold him and cuddle him. And, you know, I I only had my own experience to go off of.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, okay," and I allowed, of course, I wasn't going to force him into a hug or anything like that. It shines such a bright light. I was with a friend the other day, and she has a little girl and a little boy, and the little boy would not stop bugging her and just like
Mhm.
hitting her and terrorizing this little girl. And this is the sweetest on like the spectrum of human beings on the planet. She's already at the top, especially when you factor in her age. Like she's just an incredibly grounded young person. And she was so patient for the entire time. And finally she was just like, I can't do this. And she started crying. And I felt so much for her because she was with her little brother and then my son. So she didn't have any other girls. And reading about how important it is to little girls at this age to be building those social networks, building those nurturing skills, wanting to make friends, wanting to create these social connections that are deep. And all little boys want to do is break stuff and just everything that he was doing, just all they want to do is physical, run, jump, hide, push, shove, which again, I was just like, oh my goodness, where are all these things coming from in my son? Where is he picking up on this behavior? And that would be an example of how, no, that's just the nature part of the equation. Like he loves to go outside. He has this Minecraft sword that he got for his Halloween costume last year.
Okay.
And I joke around about how I didn't realize, I have cats, and anybody who's a cat person out there knows how much cats love boxes, cardboard boxes. Like, who cares? You don't even need to buy any toys, just get the cardboard boxes. Well, I soon realized that my son is the same way. He loves cardboard boxes because he'll take them and he'll just smash them in the back. He'll just like tear them up, and I'm like, what do you do, what do you like about this? And he's like, I just like to see how strong I am. I like to see it damaged. I like to see how much damage. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Again, pre-reading this and then after reading this, I'm like, oh, okay, like this is part of his nature of protector and strength and power and literally what they're wired for. Again, we haven't read the male book,
Right.
have not read the male brain book, and just from the content we have read, differentiating the two, it has brought so much into my awareness about this.
Isn't that? And it was interesting for me to read about this, the things that young women need as they're developing at this age, because I
Mm.
look back and I'm like, I had an older brother and a younger brother, and I was a tomboy until high school. So very much always around boys, did not have a female network, did not have these close relationships that they say are a necessity for the
Mm.
female brain to develop. And I remember feeling so disconnected, so
Mhm.
just something was off, something was wrong. I struggled through my childhood and I struggled through my young adolescent years. And I think it was this. I think it was that
Yeah.
I didn't have those connections. The closest thing was like ballet classes, and little dance classes. But even then, I really didn't connect with the other girls. I wasn't
Mhm.
the girly girl that they were. It was like, it's just so unique. And so reading about all of this, I'm like, okay, interesting. I'm going to make sure that my brother and sister in law, both brothers and sister-in-laws, make sure that their little girls have opportunity to also be surrounded by other little girls, because it's so
Mm.
easy to just let them be wherever you go.
Mhm.
And so if you can put your little girls in spaces where they can be around other little girls, that's going to be so, so helpful. It's just really powerful. And especially from someone who grew up, and now I have a stronger network of females. It's been the last 2 or 3 years where I've really developed these female relationships and surrounded myself with more women. And I tell you, I have felt the most regulated, the most aligned, the most in love with my life ever since having these relationships. And I really, really I wish that I'd had them sooner. So I thought that
Yeah.
I'd bring that up because it's a very important thing. If you can influence the circles in which your children are around, like get her in spaces where she can meet other girls because it will help. It'll also help her develop her empathy, her communication skills, her nurturing skills,
Her
all of these
confidence.
aspects. Yes,
Hmm.
confidence, 1,000,000%. And
Hmm.
navigating just like social hierarchies in different
Hmm.
environments with groups of people, because even in groups of women, there is still going to be, I guess you can call it an alpha. Like there's
Hmm.
still going to be a woman who's a leader, the lead heart, the heart cell in the petri dish,
Hmm.
right? What that is actually a study that Harvard did a while ago where they took a single cell from 5 different cow hearts and they put that single cell into a petri dish, and at start they were all beating at different paces, and then after a while they all determined which of those 5 cells was the strongest heartbeat, and they all sync up with it, just like we as females tend to sync up with our periods, right?
Yep.
We tend to sync up with our emotional ups and downs and swings, right? I know what's happening in my life because you and I are so connected. We tend to be having similar experiences at the same time. That is not a coincidence. That is the way that nature has formed us as beings to be in rapport, to actually have those like experiences, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that really stuck out to me from the book, and again, this is a little bit later because it goes into the fetal development and then the infancy,
Mhm.
which they talk about how there's actually an infant puberty, which I found very fascinating. And what that means, having the infant puberty, is that the amount of hormones surging through little boys and little girls up until about 9 months, I think it was for the little girl,
Mhm.
and maybe a little bit longer for the little boys, or later or something like that, that they have the amount of hormones that you go through when you experience puberty.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who has newborns, that would be a cause for some of the mood swings, perhaps.
Yes.
And at least at the writing of the book, they didn't really understand why this happens. Like they don't really know what the purpose of that is
And I guess
biologically.
it's good to point out the book was written in 2006 or published in
Hmm.
2006. So there is room for growth when it comes to the science and research.
Hmm.
And I'm also like blown away. I don't know if you noticed, but like the entire back of the book, maybe the last 100 pages of the book, it's all citing research.
Hmm.
So this isn't someone's idea of what this is. This is a woman who put her heart and soul into researching in depth and then being able to simplify it so that people like Michelle and I can now understand this and then take it into our world. And it's so this isn't just information coming from someone who thinks they're seeing what they're seeing through stories and anecdotes and patterns around them. It's truly coming from research back stuff. So I wanted to read this one little bit because it stuck out to me, and it says baby girls are born interested in emotional expression. They take meaning about themselves from a look, a touch, every reaction from the people they come in contact with. From these cues, they'll discover whether they are worthy, lovable, or annoying.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
that's
I
something I
highlighted it.
see in women of all ages,
Hmm.
but to think that that starts as a baby.
Hmm.
So if you're struggling with that, or if you tend to be someone who fills in the gaps, is what I call it, where, oh, she didn't call me, she must not like me, or must not have, well, it's like, no, no, no. Maybe she answered the text in her mind, or got really busy, or walked into a meeting and forgot she needed to get back to you. Like we fill in the gaps and we determine our own worthiness and value based on that. Well, that is something that both Michelle and I can teach you how to get around and work
Hmm.
through, and know it is in your nature. It started at a very, very young age for survival. We have to read faces and read these things so that we can survive.
Yeah, that was, I can't tell you how many things that I highlighted that had to do with that. How little girls start meaning making at a younger age
Yeah.
than little boys. Again, you can talk to a little girl or not talk to her, and she will make a meaning out of that. and you could put the little boy through the same situation and it'll just go over his head. He
Yeah.
just sees it as black and white, logical, as you said.
Mhm.
And to think that we can be so influenced at such a young age to decide what our worth is going to be, that one got to me. I'm going to say that. Um, I have here, since a little girl responds so well to faces, chances are mom and dad will make a lot of faces and she'll get even better at responding.
Mhm.
She'll be engaged in an activity that reinforces her face studying skill, and her brain will assign more and more neurons to that activity. Gender education and biology collaborate to make us who we are. So, right from there, imagine if a little girl doesn't get that though.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you just recounted was your experience growing up. That you had a very difficult time making those social connections because maybe since you're the middle child, hey, I'm used to raising a boy and this is how the boys were. And
Yeah.
I'm just going to do the same thing with the little girl. And the little girl actually needed something different. I'm also, you and I discovered this a few episodes ago that we had a very similar upbringing because I'm also the middle child with two boys, also was a tomboy, also had a really difficult time connecting with people. And then, to, at least in my experience, I had layered in a lot of cultural confusion because I was American when I went to school and I was
Yeah.
Mexican when I came home. And that was also another very confusing element of another discussion, another topic for another day. And just thinking about how we, what I tell my clients or anybody who is encountering some sort of block and they're thinking my life is great, everything is fine. Nobody is ever going to come up to you or I or to themselves and say, I just don't think I'm good enough. Like, I know that I'm not good enough, or I know that I have this problem. Most people consciously are like, well, no, I know I'm good enough. I know that's not true about me. And that's the problem is that consciously we know better. We know logically that we have what it takes because we have seen evidence of our successes. And a lot of the times, at the very deep unconscious level, there is some sort of programming around worthiness or not being good enough. And it's different enough for every person that there's a big, you have to sift through quite a bit to find what that little piece of programming is.
Yeah.
And that's what I have found has been the biggest obstacle, both in my own life and when I'm with clients, especially who are high achievers, because it's almost like they're in denial that they have this sort of programming because they don't have a conscious recollection of it either. They're like, well, my
Right.
life is great. I don't even have a reason to have this. This is where it fills in that gap.
Yeah.
It's like it's because it happened when you were a baby and you
Yeah.
don't remember, and it happened because you interpreted a face that your mom made or didn't make when you were two, and you have zero recollection, and yet you created meaning out of that in that moment, forgot all about it. It's been running in your life in the background since that moment for your
Yeah.
entire life. Now, some of us get around it, like we either find coping mechanisms or we do manage to break through some of those things, and other times they just stay there hidden.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a kid fall, hurt themselves, but their parent just looks at them and go, "Okay, hi, good job," or
Yeah.
like, "All right," like they make no issue, and the kid just gets up and keeps going.
Oh yeah.
Versus most kids who fall, and mom goes, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" Like that shift in not only facial expression but energy
Mm.
programs the child for how they should respond when they fail, fall, and get hurt.
Hmm.
So if you want to make a resilient child, encourage them that falling is just a part of the process. We all fall while we learn to walk. So celebrate them. Yay! amazing. You got back up. Good job. Like,
Mhm.
that's so much different of a response than if you're always overprotective of your child and going, oh my gosh, are you okay? Oh, did that hurt? And let me, can you let mommy kiss that? Like, these are the child, not only do they register that, oh, when I fall, I'm supposed to cry and get upset because mommy did.
Yep.
They also register when I fall and cry and get upset, I get attention. And
Mhm.
like that in itself then programs even deeper because we all want attention. We all want to be seen, heard, and understood. And if I trip and fall and nobody pays attention, then I might just become more dramatic. And what are we seeing in the world right now? We're seeing an entire identity of what they call Karens, these people
Mhm.
who I truly believe they just learned at a very young age the more dramatic, the more attention. And so now they're in this space of like, let me just get louder and then I'll get the attention I'm actually looking for, which in itself is not helpful or healthy for us as a community and as a whole. So I'm encouraging all of those mothers out there who have and the ability to do so to give the attention positively and like give the attention before the child feels they need to act out to earn it. Like these children deserve your attention. And it's a deep why as to why I'm doing
Mhm.
all of the things that I do. Um, very much am blessed with a life where I get to choose to show up and work every day. I get to decide that I get to do this. And it's because I have zero plans of having my own children. I just plan on being the greatest super aunt in the world to all of these little babies. And I also, the deeper meaning and why behind everything I do in my business is to help regulate mothers and fathers so that they can go home and actually be present with their kids versus what do you want, baby? Shh, no, mommy's on a call. Or just getting down and leaning down and go, what was that, baby? Okay, yeah, give mommy about 2 minutes and I'll get right back. Like that's very different response. And
Mhm.
it's because we get so overwhelmed in life and we don't necessarily have the skills and tools to regulate ourselves. So, how are we going to extend that to the kids? Which brings me to another thing I wanted to read straight from the book because this hit me like a ton of bricks, right? Because of her ability to observe and feel emotional cues, a girl actually incorporates her mother's nervous system
Mm.
into her own. I talk to parents about this and used to all the time. And it was more coming from just co regulation and rapport knowledge. But now there's actual brain science around the fact that these little girls do take on mom's nervous system. So if you think about this, have you ever met a new mom who's just, well, she's probably a single mom, has to handle it all on her own. Maybe she has multiple kids. And so she's just very anxious. Or maybe she's having a really bad bout of postpartum, but she has a lot of high anxiety. And then you look at the baby, and the baby is not sleeping well, always crying, very erratic, like shifts in emotions. Like that is her picking up on mom's energy and nervous system. Versus I have other friends who are like, no, my baby's fine, sleeps through the night, is really calm, eats like a champ, like all the things. And I just look back at mom. Well, moms meditate. This mom moves her body. This mom does her healing work. This mom has been learning the skills of co regulation in her life and business for a long time to where it can be incorporated into their child's nervous system. So it's my reminder to you as moms that we have to do the inner work first. We have to be so focused on making sure that the energy we bring back into our households, the energy that we have around our kids, the nervous system, it is all transferring to your children. Your nervous system is not because of your child. Your child is because of your nervous system. So go inward, meditate, do the work on you first, and you will see a shift in your child. Don't wait until your child stops having tantrums to then get your nervous system in check.
Yeah, it goes the other way around. And it's so funny because I have, obviously, I'm Mexican. And so there's a lot of those old wives' tales, if you will, in my culture about how to do certain things. And I remember that being one of the things that my mom told me whenever I first had my baby. And she's like, they can read your energy. So I'm so grateful that that was already in my paradigm. And I remember going through, I had such a difficult postpartum. I had a paralyzed left leg that nobody could tell me what happened, why it happened, if I was going to be able to regain my ability to walk again like a normal person. I could walk around if I dragged my foot because my hip wasn't paralyzed, but everything from the knee down was. And even from that first moment, I felt so degraded as a mother because I couldn't even walk around with my child to rock my baby. There was a lot going. I mean, so there was a lot of fear, obviously. And then I was having a really difficult time with breastfeeding because Leo had lip and tongue ties,
Mm.
which we did get fixed, and not before there was a lot of damage done and thrush, and just it was such a struggle. And I know at least in my friend circle, this was a huge thing. Don't know how it is for many women right now. I had so much shame around not being able to breastfeed my child because it is such an important thing for a child to be able to breastfeed. And being in that state of not being able to walk, having postpartum, all of the hormonal shifts that happen, having the thrush, having an issue with breastfeeding, and then with sleep and the deprivation that comes along, I made a choice that he was going to be healthier if I was happier.
Mm.
And that was not an easy choice. It was against everything that I had read about and, wanted to believe in. Yet at the core, with the training that we have, and with what my mom was telling me, it was like it is more important for me to show up and be happy and be in a good space than even just as breastfeeding. Like, thank God we've got other alternatives to
Yeah.
breastfeeding. What did people do when that wasn't an option? A happy baby is a fed baby. And it was a very big psychological thing for me. And guess what? My son is great. He is fine now. He prefers to eat veggies to anything else on his plate. We took him to the pediatrician the other day for a 6-week checkup. And when the pediatrician asked him what his favorite thing to eat was for lunch, he said dragon's blood, which is what we call the minestrone, which is an Italian soup that's all vegetables. It's all just really healthy, homemade at home. And he's healthy and happy and thriving, even though I wasn't able to breastfeed him for as long as I wanted to. And I think it comes back to that, how important it is as a mom, our energy. And the story you told earlier, Jayna, about moms and how they react and how the children will react reminded me of something that happened last year. He was just not into the pool at all until the very, very end of the summer, right before his birthday party. All of a sudden, he was all about the pool. And we threw him a pool party at my parents' house, and he was just so happy, so excited that at one point he jumped into the pool without his life vest
Floaties.
on.
Oh my gosh.
And it was in the deeper end of the pool.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, I was watching him. My mom was in the pool, also near where he went. And I swear everything happened in slow motion because I see him running and I'm just like, he doesn't have a life vest on. My mom happens to see him and she's like, oh, what's about to happen? And we both just watched in slow motion as he landed in the pool, came back up, and he had this look in his face of like, oh, something's different. And I was just frozen. I was like, how is he going to react? What's going to happen? And my mom, who was much closer to him in the water, thankfully did the exact same thing. And we both kept our cool. And she was, not frantically, but just like, okay, going over to him. And I'm just watching, like, wow, that was amazing. Look at what you just did. You just swam. That was really good. And it really was very good. What could have happened if I reacted by saying, jumping in the pool to go get him? Trauma.
Yeah.
instantly created because something bad happened. Mommy screamed. Everyone's bad attention is on him.
Yeah.
Fast forward to this year, and he did his swim classes, and he's a very good swimmer now, and he's so confident. He even asked us if he was going to get to do swimming again. So we're looking into doing swim options like competitively. His dad used to be a competitive swimmer, and that could have been something that wasn't an opportunity for him because of how
Mhm.
I reacted and even how my mother reacted. So I'm so grateful for being brought up in that, even again, even before I had these tools of, hey,
Yeah.
let's not overreact, or let's, it's not even about overreacting. It's about, well, let's see how he's going to handle this, and
Yes.
let's play off of his energy and see how we can make this into a positive.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're just projecting our own fear, sadness,
Mhm.
shame, guilt, all of the things onto our kids. And then they now have to go through years and years and years of unlearning. So the best thing to do is what you did, zero response.
Mhm.
Just wait and see what happens. Trust.
Mhm.
It's that ability to trust. I
Mhm.
want to go back to something you had said at the beginning of your talking here was talking
Mhm.
about the shame of not being able to breastfeed and some of the
Yeah.
other things that might be happening as mothers navigate postpartum and having a newborn and your entire life changing in an instant. I'm curious, as a non baby haver,
Mhm.
how can we as a community support moms like that? Because I know that having community around you can be super helpful. And even though I tell people, like, let me know what you need, I know that's not the best way to do it because then it puts another task on her and she can't even think about, did I put underwear on today? Right. Like, so is how can we support moms who maybe we don't actually know if they're struggling because they're keeping it to themselves? Like, how do we broach that conversation? And if we do know they're struggling, what is the best way to actually support?
There's one thing that stands out in my mind more than anything else. And this is, I'm very fortunate to have a group of girlfriends that we all had babies around the same time. So I can't say it was a single person who, or not single, but a non-mother who did this. And yet the premise I think is the same. I was having to go to physical therapy throughout my postpartum on top of everything else because I couldn't move, right? I was
Mhm.
paralyzed
Right.
in my leg, and I was so exhausted. I was so worn out because of that, mentally, emotionally, physically. There is nothing like the experience of looking at a part of your body and trying as hard as you can with all of your might and not being able to move it. Like it is indescribable. I am so grateful that I can walk today. I can walk today normally, by the way. I did regain my ability for the audience, just in case you didn't know. And it gave me a new appreciation for a lot of things and the struggles that people go through. And I just remember being so upset, and I was depressed. I totally didn't want to admit it because I didn't want to fall in the black hole of that desperation. I was like, I can
Mm.
do this. And yet I was struggling so hard, and I was texting my girlfriend, and I can't remember what I was saying. I was talking about how I didn't even want to go to these physical therapy appointments because it was so hard and I couldn't move. And so it was just awful to go, and like nothing happened. And she said something to the lines of, well, aren't you going to be so grateful that you did this for yourself?
Wow.
She gave me the most powerful reframe of just, you're doing this for you. You're showing up for yourself. And in the long run, you're going to feel so much better after you get done with that appointment because you completed it.
Yeah.
And by golly gee willikers, I was like, you're right. I know I don't feel it now. And
Yeah.
I know that you're correct. And it reminds me of a really good friend of mine. Her name is Amanda, and she had the most amazing mindset as she overcame her battle with breast cancer. And one of the things that she talked about was how she would anticipate how she wasn't going to feel well.
Mm.
And she would either get her her exercise in before a chemo treatment, the day of. And then
Mhm.
afterwards, she would say, I'm just going to do 5 minutes. And 5 minutes would turn into 10. And 10 would turn into 15. And 15 would turn into half an hour because the hardest part was getting started.
Yes.
And so I think that's the mindset shift that she helped me with was, hey, I know this isn't easy right now, but just think about how you're going to feel after you're done because you did this, how proud you're going to be that you are doing all of this. And I think that's the mindset in the long run because the fourth trimester, as it is called, I thought the third trimester was hard. I remember being like, I can't wait. I just want to get this baby out of my body. I want my body back. Obviously, I didn't get my body back. I was paralyzed. I was like, oh no, be careful what you ask for. The fourth trimester, it's like a marathon. It's a year-long marathon. If you think about it, you've got the 9 months and then you got the last, that fourth trimester, the first 3 months where you're just like, oh my gosh, everything is so different, even in sometimes in unimaginable ways when things don't go the normal standard way that we all hope and envision that it'll
Yeah.
go. I still had it easy compared to other people I know, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm sharing that because when you learn to take everything one day at a time, and if you have someone in your corner who can just check in on you
Mm.
to say, hey, what what are you excited about today, or what are you not excited about today? Like, what do you need a little bit of motivation to get through your day?
Yeah.
I remember my mom at one point, she asked me, it was in the fourth trimester, and she asked me, holding my son, and she was like, was it all worth it? And I looked at her and I had tears in my eyes because I wasn't through the gauntlet yet. And I was just like, I can't even answer that question right now. Then I felt bad for not being able to say yes right off the bat. And it was a normal response.
Yeah.
Fast forward again, just 3 more months after that. And I was like, absolutely, hands down, a million%. It was all worth it. I would do it again a million times. So it's just about recognizing where you're at and having someone who can be with you
Mm.
to support you and say, hey, it's okay that you're feeling the way you're feeling. And you don't have to rush this. Let's just make it through today. And once you make it through enough todays in that way, you get to this tipping point where you're just like, oh, damn, look at everything that I did and that I
Yeah.
accomplished. And if I could do that, I really can do anything. That was the gift for me, of course, is having been able to go through. And then COVID happened after that. It was like a really strange time of life. And uh, yeah, definitely having support. I know that that's not really about the female brain, but at the same time, it is about the female brain
Yeah.
because we're talking about what did I need the most was connection.
Yeah. I love that. Um, Awesome. I think there's something to bring up that you also touched on there is body image. Is like there's so much pressure to get your pre-baby body back fast and
Mm-hmm.
immediately and start 6 weeks after and this and that. Can you speak to the power of I don't know what your journey was post pregnancy. This will be our first time talking about this and um I know so many moms who feel like the moment that the doctor says you can do something that they jump right back into it all. And then I hear others who wait a year or two and just take time because it's a lot. I know that I think for me, the one that resonates the most is it 6 months in, 6 months or 9 months in, 9 months out. So it's like give yourself at least those 9 months to like feel like you're okay again. But can you speak to what you experienced or like what it's like to actually live in a body you don't feel at home in is the words I've heard used before?
Oh, yes. That aspect. I would say I think my situation is again a little unique because of the leg paralysis
Mm.
thing. And the reason I say that is I couldn't.
Right.
work out. I couldn't exercise. I couldn't even walk without just dragging my foot around and being a fall risk until about, I would say 3 to 4 months later,
Okay.
I could walk. I still had a limp. It was less noticeable. And I have still to this day, if you look at my hamstrings, they're completely different sizes
Mm.
because of the atrophy of the muscles that happen and the imbalance. What I didn't realize at the time, I didn't even know my hamstring was paralyzed, by the way, like until I went to one of my physical therapy appointments. And so once I got back into walking and I can exercise, I kept getting injured.
Mm.
And I didn't know why. I thought it was just because of the mom, body, just all of the changes, but it also had to do with that. So I think, take it easier on myself. I focused a lot more on the nutrition part and doing light things and working on functional movements, doing what I could to do that sort of thing. And I definitely haven't gotten my I should say my previous body back. I'm okay with that now. It did take a long time to realize, like, hey, my body just doesn't look the same. Even when I reach the same weight, the clothes don't fit. That's something that they don't tell you. Like, it's not even about your weight anymore. It's the shape of your entire body changes.
Yeah. Don't your
And
hips and stuff change too because you're actually pushing out a baby and so the hips
mhm.
change? Yeah.
Yeah, your hips, like there's a little tissue and that connects your hips in the front, and in mine it completely separated
Yeah.
and didn't come back. I'm
Right.
sure it happens. I only found that out on accident through an X-ray checking for scoliosis.
Wow. Well, they call them birthing hips because, like, once
Mhm.
you have a baby, your hips are wider,
Mhm.
something like
Mhm.
that. I mean, I don't know from
Yes.
experience.
Yes.
Just, yeah.
No, no, it makes having the second one a lot easier, I hear. They just slip out in a lot of the cases. I wouldn't know. I didn't have a second one. I
Achoo!
was like, "No, what the oh, no, there's a baby in the bathtub," or in the not the bathtub, the toilet. I mean, I guess it could happen in the bathtub, though, if you sneeze in the bathtub, like, why not? Why not?
Hey,
So
water birthing, I hear, is a great way to go.
and I actually haven't gotten to the birthing years part of the female brain. So I'm very interested in
Oh,
recounting everything I'm telling you and then reading about it here in the book to see how true it was.
yeah.
And you had asked me a question. What was that question? Oh, the body. Yeah, the body wasn't the same. I think what it is though, and this is what it was for me. I have been very blessed. I have come to find out in that enjoy transformation. Yeah, I enjoy. I'm very good at transformation. I'm really talented at being adaptable, is what I've been told by other people.
Okay.
And just going with whatever's in front of me and taking on a new role. And I did that with motherhood.
Yeah.
You see, I had all these preconceived notions of what it meant to be a mom and who I had to become in order to be a mom. And I had listened to so many people talk negatively about parenthood that I was really afraid of becoming a parent and losing my
Mm.
life and losing everything about myself because that's what I was told, that was
Yeah.
programmed. And then I became a mom, and then I realized it didn't have to be that way. And thankfully, I had a lot of girlfriends around me who didn't have those negative inputs, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh, I can still be myself and be a mom, and just figuring out who am I after I become a mother.
Mm.
So I think that is a huge help because when you can accept yourself and your identity, it's not about your body.
Yeah.
It's about feeling like you've lost a part of yourself,
Yeah.
who you were. And the body is the easiest thing to nitpick about and to see the difference in.
Yeah.
It's the external that you see. It goes so much deeper than that, though. It's really about who am I now that I'm a mom?
Yeah.
Do I get to have fun anymore? Do I get to be myself? Do I get to make the jokes I used to make? Do I get to have time for myself, or is that considered a bad thing? Sorting through all of those things in your mind and figuring out and crystallizing who you really are, I think is the biggest part of the journey. At least it was for me in the body image thing.
Yeah. It's crazy that adaptations, I look forward to getting to the chapter and we can talk more in depth. And
Hmm.
it does talk about mom brain because, you hear that all the time.
Hmm.
Oh, mom brain. I forgot. I forgot. It does talk about how you lose literal brain matter for the
Hmm.
next 2 years. Your brain adapts the moment that you push
Hmm.
that baby out. Your brain, it rewires itself. The gray matter shrinks, your brain shrinks. I forgot what was is to like 60% of its mass. We'll find that and we'll in a future
Hmm.
episode we'll get the actual science. But recalling off the top of my head, the reason for that is so that you can put all your focus on this baby because your body and does not want you to go right back to work the next day.
Hmm.
Because that would be bad. The baby would not survive in
Hmm.
Paleolithic times, right? Our
Hmm.
brains are still old. We might
Yeah.
have AI now, but our brains have not caught up to that yet. And so the idea that your brain literally changes so that all of your focus can be put on just caring for this baby. So those women who have a hard time, should I stay home with my baby? Should I still pursue my business? Why can't I focus on these calls? Why can't I think the same? I'm not able to strategize like I was with my clients and all of these different things because your brain actually changes. And
Hmm.
so give yourself some grace. And also, please know that going into this, that you're not going to be the same workhorse you were going in coming out, at least for the next 2 years. It says about 18 to 24 months does it take for your brain to get back to where it was. And by that point, that's because your child is a little bit more on the independent side and doesn't necessarily need to be directly connected to you all the time. And so that's a little bit of like permission to be like,
Hmm.
it's okay. Like it's part of the process. Don't be hard on yourself because you don't remember all the things. I think it's interesting too because of how much new stuff you have to remember, like feedings and medications and appointments and like it's like, come
And
on, brain. Like, could you not have helped? But at least we are in a world with AI, so you can have it help you
yeah,
out a little bit,
I
right?
think I think part of the in a way though, like not having your brain capacity, it's akin to when you are just wiping the slate clean.
Yeah,
Because having your brain in that mushy, malleable state can also make it easier for you to create those new routines and patterns that you have to create.
this is true.
At least that's the way I just received it when you said that. I'm like, yeah, there is a benefit to that. And what you're talking about is just in the brain, absolutely the brain. Let's not even talk about the body. My one of my best friends, she actually just she did some testing
Okay.
for, she just had a baby, and it's all of the micronutrients that get used up for the baby. So we're deficient already, many of us, just because the nutrition isn't available in our food. So
Yeah.
then you become a mom and are supplying to this baby. And if you don't have enough of a nutrient from your diet, then it starts taking it from your own body and your own stores for the baby.
Mm.
So you become very depleted. I've heard some studies cite that it takes up to 8 years for a mother's body to completely heal from having just one
Yeah.
bebe. So if that, I mean, I believe that because again, body is so different after having a
Yeah.
child. I haven't even hit those 8 years yet.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of some of my friends who are very, very holistic and have a lot of knowledge in this and
Hmm.
prepared themselves well for their kids. And then there's like they will so a friend of mine who very close to, she had a home birth. She had a doula with her. They did the whole process at home, where she had the baby and then they allowed herself to naturally pass the placenta. Then they
Hmm.
allowed the baby to stay connected to the placenta until
Hmm.
it was completely drained and just almost gray at that point. And then that's when they clamped and cut the cord. And then they took the placenta and the doula then took it in some special crystallized blender, or they might
Mhm.
have like freeze dried it first or something, but they blended up and essentially gave her capsules that then for the next month or two, maybe 3 months total,
Mhm.
that she was slowly dosing herself with the placenta because of the amount of dense nutrients in the
Mhm.
placenta. And it might sound pretty gross, but I know that that mother did not have any postpartum issues. She was back on her feet pretty quickly. Her body adapted well and she crushed it. And so I can only attest that to she had had 4 children before this that she did not do any of that with. And so
Mm.
she did not have the same results. And so I do your research. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything. And I think it's unique that every aspect of the journey can be utilized to help you benefit. And so it would be my encouragement to do your research first and to figure out what's the best method for you, whether that is a home birthing or a water birthing, or maybe it is just going to the hospital and you have a really great doctor that you trust and a great nursing staff. Like, fantastic. There is no shame about any way to have your baby, whatever it is that gets a healthy baby onto this planet. And would encourage you to do the research because it could be that reintroducing those nutrients from your own body back into your body can help replenish those stores faster than 8 years, because 8 years sounds like a long time to suffer with a shortage of nutrients in your body.
Oh yeah. And I don't and that citing the 8 years, I don't know that it's just specifically about the nutrients. This is just I have one of those friends too. She's mega crunchy and
Yeah.
she's like, yeah, it takes 8 years for the female body to completely heal just from everything. I mean, even just having all of your organs displaced
Yeah.
because of the size of the baby. Like all of these micro things that I'm sure we're not even thinking about,
Yeah.
because I know this is talking about the brain, and we're so much more. The brain is huge. There's so much more that happens in the body at the same
Yeah.
time during
Yeah.
that process.
Like the amount of laxation in the muscles and tendons and all of that happens so that you can birth the baby and
Oh
not
yeah.
split into two pieces.
Yes.
And that also puts you prone to injury, which is
Yes.
why they tell you additionally not to do extreme fitness after the
Hmm.
birthing, not just because your womb is still healing and you have a massive wound internally, but also because your body is still just super flexible and like you're more prone to hurting yourself. So
Hmm.
again, it's quite amazing, this
The
magnificent
wisdom.
machine that we've been given that allows us to adapt and grow. And I guess the thing that is interesting to me, and I can't wait to continue to live my life and find out, is now that I understand the different phases of the female brain based on a traditional female life, right?
Hmm.
Most 99% is probably a gross overestimation, but 99% of women give birth at some point in their life. I am not one of those women who plans to give birth at any point in my life. And I'm curious to see if I automatically, my brain goes straight to the brain that happens post or pre and post menopause.
Hmm.
Like, I'm skipping over a lot of these
Hmm.
brain changes and functions. And it makes me think, like, does that mean that I'm just going to get to that, maybe I'm already living in the brain that allows me to see that I can stand up for myself, build my world, like have that independence that normally doesn't come until the 50s for women, but that's because it's not until they're out of the nurturing phase, until all of their children are gone and they've empty nested and they're allowed to think about themselves only, does then the brain allow for that. I'm curious to see if like that happens sooner for me because I don't ever go through that, or if I'm still naturally going to have these nurturingness because I am around a lot of my friends' kids, my nieces and nephews. I do get a bits and pieces of that. So I'm really curious personally how my brain's going to respond. And maybe I'm in a phase of that nurturingness because I get split second moments of baby fever, which I always
Yes, you do.
I tell my brother and sister-in-law, like, I got to take my baby fever pills every time I go to their house because their two little ones are just like the greatest children on the planet
Mm.
as far as like how they act and who they are and their little personalities coming out. And just, I went over there to pump up a tire on the way home from the gym the other day, and my little 1-year-old niece just waddles on out with her big old arms open. And I'm like, I haven't seen you in like 6 weeks. And that's a long time for a 1-year-old.
Mhm.
But for her to know and be so familiar with me because I intentionally imprint on these children, right? I intentionally am there a lot during the infant age, like when they're growing in, because I know that what I put in now is what I'll get out later. I also am very intentional about speaking words of affirmation to them, especially when bottle feeding, because they're getting so much dopamine while
Mhm.
eating and so much serotonin and all of these different neurochemicals that whatever's happening during that phase is imprinted deeply. And so as they're bottle feeding, I'll just be whispering things to them. You're so powerful. You're beautiful. You can do any. And like my mom and brother and sister and people around me are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, shh. And I'll just go right back to it. And I just look at them and eye contact and whisper to them as they're eating. But like, these are all the things that have allowed, I believe, allowed me to have such a close bond with them and allow to have that semi nurturing maternal connection to these little girls, to where when I come over, it is a similar experience to what mom gets, that closeness to them, because I've invested all of that time and energy into them. And it blessed my heart, because I really wasn't quite sure if she was going to be a little standoffish or, a little questionable, like, who's this person? It's been so long. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, I think that investing the time that I have to be there, be with them, playing and reading books, and it's not TVs and tablets. It's like getting on your hands and knees and rolling around with them and actually physically building something with blocks and reading books. Like, every time I go over there, my nieces run to the book wall and grab a book and then come back to me, because they know they have anchored in and associated me to reading, and not just reading, but like intentional reading. Like, they get cuddled up on the couch next to me and like scooch their little selves in and then open it up, and they love how I read it, because it's not just reading a book. It's like making the voices and the gestures, and the theater kid comes out in me. And I just know that there's so much there. So it's, again, if even if you're not the direct mother of a child, like, investing that time in infancy matters.
Mhm.
And even as they grow, I have other brothers, sisters, friends, whatever, where they look and they're like, oh, I'll wait till they're in their teens when I can really talk to them. Like, I'll just wait until they get older. I'm like, no, you have to invest now, because once they get to their teens, they're not going to know anything about you. I have aunts and uncles that I have zero interest in, because they don't know me and I don't really care about them, because there was no bond formed at a young age. It was weird. And they just feel like a person that is a friend of my parents, even though they're closer than that. But know that if you want to get something out of it and you want that return on investment, you must invest now, just like stocks, and then allow that to compound over time. But like, be there in the infancy, be there in the baby phases. Hold that darn baby as much as humanly possible, right? Have that physical like connection. Last thing I'll say about this was, like, my 1-year-old niece. I remember maybe 3 or so months ago now, there was a day I was babysitting and she needed to be put down for a nap. And she just, for the life of me, would not let me put her down and walk out of the room. And so I was like, all right, that's fine. I silenced my watch, silenced my phone, and sat in that rocking chair in the pitch black darkness with her little face drooling down my chest, like, just feeling the warmth of this little bundle of joy. And I'm just sitting there bawling, like, just weeping, just tears coming down, because the amount of presence, the amount of love. And I just kept thinking about, like, this little girl is going to have a full life, and she's going to become, I don't know, a doctor, a dentist, the president, a race car driver, whatever the hell she wants to be. But she gets to be that thing. And I was just in so much gratitude for the fact that I, up until this point, have built a life that I could sit there for an hour and 15 minutes in the room, not doing anything, but just holding and loving on that baby. And I know that that's part of the reason why when I show up now, she waddles straight to me with big open arms, because I've invested intentional time being focused on her, not scrolling on my phone for an hour and 15 minutes while she's sleeping on me, but just being with her.
I definitely think that you have those tendencies of nurturing. Obviously, everything that we read about in the female brain is that we are wired. We are
Mhm.
predisposed to be that way. So I think that's just authentically a part of your nature. You being an auntie, getting to be intentional with your time like that gives you an upper hand because you don't go through the changes that happen to the physical body and the physical brain like the rest of us.
Mhm.
But that's not going to prevent you from being able to invest. I would say I think it is just a different experience. Being a parent and being with your kids 100% of the time is a very different experience from having times to visit.
Yeah.
That is definitely something because I can definitely see the daydream of some of these moments that you're in and think into my life and be like, man, I don't get to have a lot of those moments.
Mm.
I don't. It's different. I know I'm not the only parent to think so because it's like, we say this all the time. We drop the kids off to grandma and grandpa's house. And grandma and grandpa are completely different and the rules are completely different than whenever they're with mom and dad and they act differently and oh he listened to everything and all of these things and it's
Mm.
like wow, I'm glad he's not throwing tantrums for you. And I think that's so special and that's so valuable because I know I cherish that. I cherish being able to have that my little one gets to have that relationship with someone where it's like, good, here's someone who can like completely spoil you in a different way with attention, with love. Whenever Leo goes to grandma and grandpa's house, he knows that for breakfast, he's going to get blueberry pancakes, a huevito taco, which is like an egg taco, a huge bowl of fruit, yogurt with blueberries, and I mean that boy eats like a teenager. Here it like if I can even get him to eat anything for breakfast, like here's a protein bar. And that's why I'm saying what you're talking about is so valuable and so beautiful because I want him to be able to have experiences
Yeah.
like that outside of being here with me, outside of the routine, because you do get into your routines as a child, as a parent, and giving your kids exposure to dedicated aunties, uncles, BFFs, grandparents, whoever it is. And also something else that what you were saying made me think about is of course you can still have all of those feelings. Think about women who adopt who aren't able to have
Mm.
kids. Of
Yeah.
course, again, and that's why I say, with the added benefit of not having the mom brain symptoms or the
Yes.
mom body symptoms, like that is so beautiful and so powerful that you get to show up in that way completely. Because I know that for a lot of moms, parents, I mean, dads too. This past weekend was the first weekend since before Leo was born that I had the house to myself for an entire night. And I was just like, something's different. I'm in my house by myself. My husband's not here. My child's not here. It's just the pets. And it was just for a few hours because I think I didn't even get home till like 8 or something. It wasn't that long. But I can't tell you how amazing it felt to be in my little sanctuary with complete silence, knowing I can do whatever I want. I'm only in my own energy. And God, I love my husband. And God, I love my little one. But this is really cool. I want more of this. And I know I'm going to hear and see right now other moms being like, yes, I just want, like, what is it you want for Mother's Day? I just want a day off. I
Yeah.
just want a day off by myself because we are constantly giving and giving and giving and nurturing and sometimes we forget to receive and to give ourselves that time. And I think that goes back to when you give yourself that time, when you give yourself your own boundaries, that preps you to be able to have more of those special intentional moments with your child. And that also gives your child the opportunity to have those special moments with said aunties and grandparents. So it's this circular effect, because that's where my husband was at a regenerative farming retreat, which I'm really excited. He and I were talking about it, and I was like, "Ooh, I need to get you on here so that we can talk about certain things." He has so much to share.
Yeah.
And Leo was with grandma and grandpa, and everyone was very happy. And when we came back together as a family unit, it was a completely different family, because
Yeah.
everyone had gotten their own recharging. Everyone had their own experiences that filled their cup. And I think that in a way that ties back to the whole piece that I was talking about earlier with identity and being a mother, and knowing that it is okay to create those experiences intentionally in your family. Like, this one happened on accident. I'm going to be quite honest.
Yeah.
My husband was going on this retreat, and it just so happened that I had an event, a work event, and I needed a babysitter. And that's how all of this happened. So now, though, I'm just like, oh, I talked to my husband about this already. I think once every quarter, we
Yeah.
need to you have a retreat or some sort of event that fills you up, where you're completely on your own. I have my own. And then, as much as we can plan it, let's have at least one night every other quarter where we can be completely by ourselves at home,
Yeah.
because it makes such a huge difference. And I think that's the piece that I know I really feel I got a lot about from this book, when I was reading more about how wired we are to nurture and to give and to be watching for everyone, and everything you said about people pleasing. And that just ramps up when you become a mom.
Yeah.
It really does, because you're like, oh, from the moment that I became pregnant, I was like, my life isn't mine anymore. There's
Mm.
another body inside of me. And that's when I started I was already going green and crunchy. That's when I was like throwing out all of the makeup, getting all of the natural makeup, doing everything. My husband was like, this girl is cuckoo. And I'm just like, you don't understand. Like, because my hormonal shifts had already begun. They'd
Yes.
already gone into overdrive of like, must protect baby life.
Yeah.
But and that's what it is. We have these hormones running our brain, which means we need to be that much more intentional as a
Yes.
woman in saying, wait a minute, who's in control right now? Is this really the appropriate response in this moment, or am I running myself into the ground? Because if I'm running myself into the ground, even though my biological drivers for survival are telling me to do this one thing, I've got to use my logical brain and look at the context of everything. Like when I decided that I was going to be okay with not breastfeeding so that I could
Right.
create a safer psychological space for myself and my child. Sometimes we get to remember that we're the ones in control,
Yeah.
or we at least have that option to be the ones in control,
Yeah.
because again, we can influence how our physiological responses in our body once we know how to do it.
100%. And you make such a great point about moms needing that time to just
Mm-hmm.
be themselves and
Mm-hmm.
just be Sarah or Joanne or Susan
Mm-hmm.
and not mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I directly heard that again and again and again when we ran the retreat in February
Mm-hmm.
this year. So many mothers said no to that retreat. I
Yes.
can't leave my kids. I
Yes.
can't leave my kids. I have my
Mm-hmm.
kids. I can't leave my kids. Jayna, 6 days is way too long to be away from my kids. And I was like, I get that. And you have to leave your kids. You need to leave your kids because those 8 mothers, actually, pretty sure everyone at the event was a mother except for
Mm-hmm.
myself. So yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much all 8 of those women were moms. All 8 of those women who did go out of their way to leave their families and come out to this event, I've heard from almost every single one of them and said, thank you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you, because they were able to go back so much calmer. so much more regulated, so much more clear. They didn't continue to project that anger and that
Mhm.
shame and that guilt on their children. Instead, they were clear channels and they could be present with their kids, spend more time with their kids. Like, we all need that escape to be able to reset ourselves. And going out and sitting on the beach and drinking margaritas is not always what you need, because I've heard
Mhm.
so many mothers do that too. And all they do is just miss their kids the whole time and then go back home and still don't feel like they actually got a
There
vacation.
was no transformation. Mhm.
That's the point. And I think that's what the retreat did so much for these women, was it actually gave them an ability to release those things
Mhm.
and to connect to other moms and
Mhm.
hear about their stuff and go, wow, I'm not the only one struggling right now.
Mhm.
Okay, I can see this. And they also got that kind of reaffirmation that
Mhm.
other moms left their kids too for this. Like, I'm allowed to be
Mhm.
more than just mom. And I think that was one of my
Mhm.
favorite things, giving them permission as they stepped into their future version of themselves, was like, who are you outside of being mom?
Right.
Because you're only going to be mom, directly for the first 18 years of their life. And then you go back to
Mhm.
being you. Who is Michelle? And if you
Mhm.
lose Michelle along those 18 years, then you end up being like some of the people who did walk in our room and go, I'm empty nesting. I'm trying to find myself all over again.
Right.
And it's like, I really want to encourage you not to lose yourself along the way and then have
Mhm.
to rediscover yourself. Just notice the shifts as you go and allow yourself to continue to see this as a different phase, but giving you permission that it is okay to leave your kids for a little while, because look, the distance makes the heart grow fonder. It's like a rubber band. The more you pull it apart, the more the tension grows. So those kids are going to get an opportunity to miss you. Your husband or
Mhm.
partner will get an opportunity to miss you. Your business will get an opportunity to not necessarily miss you, but to see what it's like to not always have you present right there all the time. And so you get this opportunity
Mhm.
to then see, oh, I don't always have to be on. I don't always have to be present. I can go for a walk. My kids will be safe. I can
Mhm.
allow auntie to come over and spend time with them, and it fills everybody's cup. I can
Mhm.
allow grandma and grandpa to have them over for the weekend, and it's going to fill their cup too, right? There is something to all of that, and to allowing yourself to be more than just mom, because I think that's the biggest problem that I see with
Mhm.
new moms, old moms, moms with one
Mhm.
kid, three kids, five kids, 12 kids. They all lose themselves at some point along the way. And if
Mhm.
this book can help you recognize that, yes, there's a biological purpose behind that for a short bit. And after a while, you're choosing that. After a
Mhm.
while, it is not a biological thing anymore. It is a comfort zone where you have just
Mhm.
become super comfortable and very familiar with always being around your child. So you don't go through the discomfort of leaving to go to an event, to go into a room, to go connect with new people, aka networking, and get really uncomfortable, and without feeling like I'm just going to escape back to my hotel room and go call my kids on FaceTime, right? It's so easy to want to fall
Mhm.
back into that familiarity that you stop pursuing these things. Yet, by actually leaving, going to these events, networking, connecting, allowing yourself to get uncomfortable, you are in fact being a living representation and a model for your children for the type of life I bet you desire them to live.
Mhm.
Because none of us want our children to, or our nieces and nephews and grandkids or whatever, to live a small life where they just stay in a familiar circle and stay home and just live on the internet. We all want them to have a big life where they get to experience the joy of connection and love and community. And so lead by example. Allow yourself
Mhm.
to be that mom who says, I'm going to go and I'm going to chase this thing. I'm going to go and I'm going to live fully. I'm going to still go out with my girlfriends and have ladies'
Mhm.
nights. I'm still going to go to concerts. I'm still going to go do these things, because by you living that, you show your kids that it is so much more to life than just serving everyone else around you. And that's
Right.
where we end up passing on and projecting that people pleasing. And so, if you want to pass on and project that self love, then love yourself. And your kids will model that, because monkey see, monkey do. Kids don't do what you say, they do what you do. And
Mhm.
so, if you really want your kids to be able to stand up for themselves, stand up for yourself. If you want your kids to have an identity, have an identity. because
Oh my
that's
God,
all
yes.
so important.
Yeah, that you're preaching everything that I have done my best to be intentional about living, because I see that so often with mothers. And I had a mother comment to me the other day. It's like, "Oh, I just love hanging out with you because you always know what you want and you say it."
Ooh,
And I was just like, well, like, this is incredible. I don't always feel like I know what I want. And thank you for saying that to me. Thank you for reflecting that back at me, that that is your perception, because to her, I'm brave and I'm authentically myself. And that, you were talking about what your bigger why is, and it's to help these parents be regulated at home. For me, it's it's become about being authentic.
yeah.
That is the core of what I desire so much for all of the mothers out there, is how do I be myself still, even if it means that I'm rewriting that identity, that I'm redesigning my reality, architecting a new identity. It's what I call myself, an identity architect and reality redesigner,
Yeah.
because that's essentially motherhood is a very pivotal point for that, for a lot of women, because they do lose sight of themselves. And what happens is, when as a mom we give and give and give and give, we're also taking opportunities away from our children to learn. And
Oof.
I have seen this play out with people that I love, who have told me, oh my God, I've created my own worst nightmare
Yeah.
in doing everything for my children to give them a better childhood than the one I had, because I had trauma in my childhood. I have now created a relationship where they're so dependent on me that I can't get away. They don't even know how to do the simplest things, and it's not their fault. And that, whoo, I knew going in, that was the opposite of what I wanted to create, because my mom did a really great job of helping us be all very independent. And I knew I wanted to continue to model that, and make some changes along the way, of course, because we always learn from our own childhoods how we would want to do things maybe a little bit differently. And and I think that's the other aspect of where my why comes from. A lot of it is from motherhood and helping mothers reclaim their identity, but the other huge piece for me personally is career, because I see so many mothers get lost in their careers, or women in general, not even just having to be mothers, but I know that happened to me, where my entire focus went into my career instead of anything else. And so I was doing great in my career and everything looked amazing, and I was crumbling in every other area of life, and no one knew it. Everyone still thought I was doing great. I actually had this conversation with my let's just say somebody very close to me, about their daughter, and how she was saying she was experiencing some sort of pain, but she's like, I don't get it, because she's telling me that she's uncomfortable, but then I see her laughing and playing with her friends. It's like she doesn't think about it. I was like, ah, ha, ha, do not be fooled. This runs in our family. Like, nobody would have known the hell that I was going through when I was at the peak of my career, engaged, and all of the things, buying, being on my own, living on my own, doing all of these incredible things, jet setting across the world. And yet I was spending every single night home alone crying. But nobody would have ever known that. I never let anyone into that. And that's the other part of me that sparks the hugest why is, where are we lying to ourselves as a woman, period? Where are we creating the lies about motherhood, that I can't be who I want to be? Where are we creating the lies about my career, that I need to be a certain person, or I need to achieve a certain thing in order to have worth in my life?
Yeah.
And getting to the point, I know I'm not the only one, getting to the point where I literally was standing or sitting really in front of somebody who was telling me everything that I had worked towards, telling me everything I wanted to hear. This is what I want. I've noticed you. You matter in this company, all these things. And then just having a blank slate and being like, I feel nothing.
Mm.
I am so numb. I am so off the path here that I finally getting exactly what I want. And it's meaningless.
Oof.
And that is what I stand for, is like, how can I help you find who you are authentically? And what does it mean to know who you are? What do we need to uncover and undo so that we can find who that is? Because for me, having my baby, while was very confusing for my identity as well, because it's like, it was also the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was a catalyst for me to decide everything you're saying. This child rules my body now, in my body. After the child is out of my body, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
They're going to model everything that I do. I at least had that much of a foundation, even though I hadn't found our tools that we have now. I had enough of that foundation to know. I heard this really great quote from a mentor of mine. It was about leadership, how your employees will do 50% of what you do and
Mhm.
100% of what you don't do. And I was
Ooh.
like, damn, that's good. so, so you can tell them to do something over and over and over. And as long as you're doing it, they'll do about halfway of what you did. But if they see you not doing it, it's like, well, he's not doing it, so I'm not going to go in. You don't go in early, they're not going to go in early.
Yeah.
You don't take time off, they're not going to take time off. Well, maybe they will. And you get the point. You get the point that everyone's always going to be modeling what you do. And he talked about it more in the aspect of mirror neurons, and
Yeah.
how, again, just neurologically, we want to mirror what especially the alpha is doing. And that for me was a wake up call that, hey, I'm like, I was so off the path in my life, and now I'm not living just for myself. Who do I want to be for this child?
Mm.
And I think that was my guiding light through everything, through all the trials and tribulations, because there is more to the pregnancy part of the story, in addition to the paralysis that I endured. And that one light was, I'm going to get to rewrite who I am. I get to decide what that's going to be. And having those little beacons along the way, like my friend telling me, you're going to be so grateful to yourself that you did this, like holding on to messaging like that along the way. And now I find myself like, oh, I get to do that for people. Like I get to help them discover what their problems are, dismantle what it is, and then be that person who says, hey, we're rewriting everything, we're realigning everything in your life. Yeah, it's going to take some work. Yeah, it's going to take some, getting used to and integrating. And aren't you going to be so glad that you did this? Isn't the 1 year version or 10-year version of you going to be so grateful that you took this opportunity? And that's really what I think lights me up, because that was my personal experience, getting lost in the
Yeah.
career, getting lost in motherhood, and then finding a way to say, you know what, like I can have my cake and eat it too. I
Yeah.
can create a life where I get to be a mom that's present, and also be a mom that creates a career and a life that she loves. It's full of purpose, passion, fulfillment. And I told you this the other day, Jayna, it's almost like with my son, watching him grow up, like just taking a step back from being Michelle and just more as an observer, it hit me the other day. I am getting to create for him the happier childhood that I didn't get to have, but that I'm having now in a way, vicariously through him. And that's because of the work that we do. Not to say that my childhood was horrific, and every single person on this planet has gone through some sort of trauma in their
Yeah.
childhood. That's just a fact of life. And trauma doesn't mean abuse.
Right. Right.
Trauma
Right.
doesn't have to mean abuse. trauma for the child could have been as simple as falling into the pool, like we talked about earlier. And that could have
Yeah.
been the most traumatic thing that ever happened that shaped the entire rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Everyone has something like that that happened in their life in childhood.
It's never too late to have a happy childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think it's so perfect. That is the most perfect way to wrap up this episode. I think I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to leave it at that because you said it so perfectly. So, yeah, we're going to continue with this book. Probably once a month, we'll put out one of these episodes on the book. Otherwise, we're just going to talk about some other cool things because we don't want to make this too structured. Michelle and I are
Yeah.
here to just have conversations, and I'll pop some other people in here and there. So, thank you for joining us for another episode of Off the Record. This is real talk for regulated leaders. We hope you got something out of this. And let us know if there's a comment section wherever you're watching this on YouTube. Let us know if you got the book. Let us know how far you are. And if you have any tidbits from chapter 1, drop them in the comments. We definitely want to hear about it.
Absolutely.